Senate will come to order. All those not having privileges on the floor will please vacate the chamber. Those in the gallery and those on the floor will please rise. We're led in prayer by Bo Burgess, pastor of Jordan Baptist Church in Galapagos Ferry, West Virginia. Please remain standing after the prayer as the senator from Harrison leads us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Let's pray. Father, we come to you today in Jesus' name. God, we ask that you would forgive us of our sin today. We know the Bible tells us all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. None are righteous, no, not one. And so, Lord, we plead the blood of Jesus today for our sins. We ask, God, for your forgiveness. I pray for the salvation, Lord, of every person in West Virginia and our country. Lord, we know that salvation comes through Jesus. He said that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And so, Lord, we thank you for salvation today. We thank you for our legislature. And God, we pray for your power, your blessing, and Lord, your touch upon these legislators, their families. God, help them to make decisions, Lord, that would be a blessing to West Virginia. The Bible says that righteousness exalteth a nation. And so, Lord, we pray that these decisions in Charleston would go to, they would be righteous and that they would bless our great state. Thank you, Lord. We give you all praise and glory. We ask it in Jesus' name, and amen.
Amen. Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will everybody rise and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading of the Journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, February 7th, 2022. The Senate met at 11 a.m. Senator Blair, Mr. President, in the chair.
Senior Senator from the 8th requests unanimous consent to further reading of the journal is dispensed with and the journal be approved. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Further reading of the journal is dispensed with and the journal is approved. Introduction of guest. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome our honorary pages for the day. Please stand and be recognized as your name is called. As guest is the Senior Senator from the 8th, Peyton Strain, Carly Payne, Tristan Clendenin, and Rayanna Breckenridge. As guest is the Junior Senator from the 8th, Caitlin Swore, Kaylin Legg, Evan Chapman, and Kelly Graham. And as guest is the Senator from Harrison, Madeline Donavant. And as guest is the Senator from Mason, Berkeley Bonecutter. Will the Senate please make them welcome? Further introductions. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is your pleasure and mine to introduce our doc of the day. In the rear of the chamber, we have with us Dr. Rutman Desigo, if you wouldn't mind standing up. Well, we did have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further introductions. Senator from Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, on behalf of the Senior Senator from the 4th District and myself, we have seated with us in the President's Gallery our honorary page, Berkeley Bonecutter's mother, Megan Bonecutter, who is our Vice President of the Mason County School Board, and her little sister, Baylor. If the Senate would please make them feel welcome.
Senator from Wetzel.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're pleased to have with us today, accompanying with the Ritchie County Rebel football team, who we will introduce during the resolutions. We have Sheriff Terry Snodgrass and County Commissioner Randall Riggs with us from Ritchie County. And we also have former Delegate Jason Harshberger and his wife Michelle. Will they please stand in the Senate? Please make them welcome.
Further introductions. Junior Senator from the 8th.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, on your behalf and on behalf of the senior senator from the 8th, seated in the President's Gallery is the chaperone for the honorary pages from Elk Valley Christian, Mr. Mike Wilson. If he could stand and if the Senate could make him feel welcome.
Senator from Upshur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we have a former senator seated in the rear of the gallery, and I'll attest to the fact that he is about the quickest vote counter I've ever seen sit in here in this gallery. So I'd like to introduce former Senator J.R. Pitzenbarger.
Senator from Upshur, continue.
Seated in the President's Gallery is Randolph County Assessor Phyllis Yoakum. Would she please stand? Senate, make her welcome.
Senior Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your behalf and junior senators from the 8th's behalf, we have with us today, seated in the President's Gallery, our chaperones for our honorary pages. We have Amy Payne, Mr. Stephen Lewis, and the clerk of our minority committees, Trina Strain. If they would all stand and the Senate make them welcome, please.
Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of my junior senator from the 12th, I'd like to welcome some folks here. First and foremost, I'd like to have the mother of Madeline Donovan please stand up. Madeline's driven all the way down here from Clarksburg. Please welcome her today. If I can ask your indulgence, Mr. President, I'd say it's so nice to have our pages back and have them running around the Senate. I think it's a great thing, and they learn so much, and I'm really glad to see them here. I have some great people from Harrison County, Mr. President. If they'll stand as their names are called. First of all, we have one of the finest sheriffs in all of West Virginia in Harrison County, and Robert Matheny is with us. And we also have one of the best assessors in Harrison County, and no close relation to me, has the same last name, but Rocky Romano is with us, and some of their great staff is with us. All of them, my good friends, Jim Tarango and Joe Cabaccio are here. They're all over here, folks. And we have Tammy Stonestreet, Brittany Stark, who has a son that's a wonderful baseball player, and Connie Sharp and Lori Thomas are all with us today. Please give them a nice welcome. Thank you all for coming and visiting with us.
Senator from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the junior senator from the 16th and myself, we would like to recognize our county clerk is here from Jefferson County. Laura Storm is in the President's Gallery. Will the Senate please make her feel welcome?
Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senators that represent the 5th, 6th, and 7th Senatorial District, I see we have Commissioner Jeff Maddox seated in the President's Gallery. Jeff, if you will, stand up and Senate make him welcome.
Senator from Marion.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. In the President's Gallery today, I have a very good friend of mine, a man who's been in law enforcement his entire adult life, and he is accompanied by the Sheriff of Calhoun County, Sheriff Bassett. But I would like for the body to please welcome the Marion County Sheriff, my dear friend, Sheriff Jim Riffle. Thank you, Jim. Stand up. Say hello to everybody.
Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senior senator from the 10th and myself, I'd like to welcome the Summers County Commissioners. If you all would stand, we have Ted Kula, Mike Gore, and Charlie Saunders, as long as our assessor, Mr. Greg Vandal. Make them welcome, please.
Junior Senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, all over the legislature, you're going to see folks from Leadership Berkeley, which is a wonderful program that tries to introduce our officials and business people and school personnel to all kinds of things that are going on in West Virginia. But I would particularly like to acknowledge Virginia Sign, who has been the county clerk in Martinsburg for 54 years. She does an amazing job, and she is planning on retiring, and I just would like to acknowledge her. Thank you.
Senator from Brook.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of myself and the Senator from Ohio, I can't know exactly which balcony, but we've got the Sheriff of Ohio County, Sheriff Tom Howard, his Chief Deputy John Schultz, as well as Brenda Miller, all coming from Ohio County to be here. If they could stand and the Senate make them feel welcome.
Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a couple introductions, on your behalf, as well as our senators from the 14th, we have Doc Licklider, County Commissioner from Mineral County, in the President's Gallery. I'd ask the Senate to make him welcome. And then from representing the Eastern Panhandle Soil Conservation District, Mr. President, from Morgan County, we have here Jim Michael and Lynn Dunham, and I'd ask them to stand and that the Senate would make them welcome.
Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. And this perhaps the most important introduction from Harrison County, only because as a park constructor, I help raise him. And you all have heard me talking about him. He's the former sheriff of Harrison County and now our circuit clerk, Albert Morano. Albert, stand up for us. There he is. He owes everything to me, Mr. President.
Are there further introductions? Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, it's Marshall University Day here at the Legislature today, and so I'm requesting unanimous consent that there is an exemption to Rule 54 for the new president of Marshall University, Brad Smith, and his delegation.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Further introductions. Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're privileged to have watching with us today virtually Mr. Danny Gray. He's one of the Redcoats who works with AARP. He's my neighbor in Roncevert. So, Danny, I hope you have a good day. Take care of things there in Roncevert. And the Senate, will you please make Danny feel welcome as he watches us virtually?
Are there further introductions? Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 4003, relating generally to commercial benefit of substances removed from waters of the state by the treatment of mine drainage.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Energy, Industry, and Mining.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4111, relating to the prescriptive authority of advanced practice registered nurses.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Health and Human Resources and then the Committee on the Judiciary.
House Bill 4296 to revise outdated provisions within Chapter 23 of the West Virginia Code, which pertains to workers' compensation.
Message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 25, updating provisions of Medical Professional Liability Act, and reports back committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration Senate Bill 438, relating generally to West Virginia Security for Public Deposits Act, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to waive the second reference to finance for Senate Bill 438. The bill has no impact on the state's revenue or represents any cost to the taxpayer.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration Senate Bill 505, updating laws on licensure and regulation of money transmitters, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Energy, Industry, and Mining has had under consideration Senate Bill 506, authorizing manufacturing investment tax credit and property tax adjustment credit against personal income tax, and reports back committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Rupi Phillips, Vice Chair.
Report be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 515, supplementing and amending appropriations of public monies to Department of Administration Public Defender Services, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 517, expiring funds from unappropriated balance in State Excess Lottery Revenue Fund, and Senate Bill 525, expiring funds from the unappropriated balance in lottery net profits, and reports the same back with the recommendation that they each do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 520, increasing financial penalties for ransomware attacks, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 543, creating Unemployment Compensation Insurance Fraud Unit within Workforce West Virginia, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 2631, provide for West Virginia DNR officers to be able to work off-duty, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Respectfully submitted, Bill Hamilton, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 592 through Senate Bill 597 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
Senior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bills 592 through Senate Bills 597 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 43 by Senators Romano and Martin, naming the U.S. Navy Specialist 1 Paul McHugh Bridge.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 22 by Senator Blair, Mr. President, commemorating 250th anniversary of Berkeley County.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 23 by Senator Baldwin, recognizing Youth Leadership Association, Youth and Government.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 24 by Senator Baldwin, recognizing Greenbrier East High School Invent Team.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Motions. Petitions.
There are none.
Unfinished business.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 36, naming the U.S. Marine Corps Corporal Harry Edward Dean, Jr. Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 37, naming the Harrison County Veterans Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 38, naming the Cox Brothers Veteran Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 39, naming the Walker Brothers Veteran Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 40, naming the Fry Brothers Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 41, naming the Henry Preston Hickman Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 42, naming the U.S. Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Herbert Herbie D. Barnes, veteran, Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Resolution 19, congratulating Ritchie County High School Rebels football team for winning the West Virginia 2021 Class A State Football Championship.
Senator from Wetzel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution put upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 19, congratulating Ritchie County High School Rebels football team for winning the West Virginia 2021 Class Single A State Football Championship.
Question is on adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? Senator from Wetzel.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're very proud today to have with us the Ritchie County Rebel football team. They had a tremendous year this year. They went 14-1. And they play in an area and a conference where the competition in single A is very difficult with schools like Doddridge County, of course, Ritchie County, Williamstown, St. Mary's, all strong single A schools. And they came 14-1, and that's wonderful in itself. Then when you get to the playoff, a lot of times you got to face the same people again that you faced in the season. This year they didn't necessarily have to do that, but let me just run through their playoff schedule. They beat Clay Battelle 46-14. They beat Mount Union 34-6. And then they beat perennial state champion Wheeling Central 20-16. That's probably their biggest win of the year right there. And then in the state championship game, they beat local rival Williamstown 42-21. They had quite a year. They got a lot of good young athletes, a wonderful support staff in the county and in the school, and a wonderful coaching staff. And I'd ask them to stand, and if the members of the Senate, please congratulate them for a wonderful championship.
So further discussion? If not, the question is on adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. Further resolutions.
Senate Resolution 20, designating February 8th, 2022 as Marshall University Day.
Senior Senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration. Committee reference be dispensed with and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 20, designating February 8th, 2022 as Marshall University Day.
Question is on adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? Senior Senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. And on behalf of all members of the body, I would like to say how much I appreciate us recognizing schools, and particularly Marshall University. At this time, I would like to make a few introductions. Since they cannot be in on the floor, I would like to make some introductions and have them stand. This is a man that a young man that I've had the privilege of working with recently in a committee that's on the Marshall campus. He is Mr. Marshall from Charleston, West Virginia, Zach Enot. He's double majoring in civil engineering and Spanish. Zach? The second, go ahead. The second is Carolyn Kinder. She is Miss Marshall from Barbersville, majoring in secondary math education. The third is Cameron Donahue, student government Senate Pro Tem from Ironton, Ohio, pre-law majoring in political science. And the fourth is Thomas Smith, the student government treasurer and finance committee chair from Huntington, West Virginia, double majoring in business management and entrepreneurship. Another person I want to introduce is a person that I've known, I say this in an affectionate way, all my life, most of his life. All of his life and most of mine. So it's one of those things that he's a person, I graduated the year before one of his brothers. We come from a community that is important of what talk about history and what has been instilled in you. The Cerrito-Canova area has been long known for having some very good football teams, basketball teams, a band that are second to none. But unless you have a pillar of that community, the pillars of community that really instill the kinds of things that has made Brad Smith what he is today, I wear on my lapel a pin with Marshall University. And I want to reflect back just a little bit about why this is so important. When I was sworn in on January 14th in 1993, before this person passed away, I met with him in Lefty Rollins. Lefty Rollins was in the House of Delegates. He was in the Senate. He was a great person, but the person that had more input on children's lives, and particularly people that went to Cerrito-Canova junior high and high school, was Marty Rollins. Marty gave me this pin because this is a pin that Lefty wore at the events when he was in the House of Delegates in here, given to him by Marshall University. Marty was the kind of person that everybody knew. She taught art, and everybody knew who Marty was, and she always made a point to know every student, whether they had anything or they didn't have anything. She always did, and she made a point, and she instilled some things that are in you today. Now, Marty and my mother were very, very good friends, and Marty actually attended the ceremony when I was sworn in 1993. So let me talk a little bit about Brad Smith and the importance of what that means to Marshall right now. You all know that I don't have as much green on because I bleed green, so if I bleed into this tie, it would just look terrible. It does have green in it. But let me talk about Brad and what Brad has meant, what him coming back means to the state of West Virginia and the city. In Canova, I lived in Canova when his father was the mayor and knew the family very well. He always touts that he is from Canova and knows, make sure that everybody in the globe knows where Canova is. He spent recently an 11-year tenure as the CEO of Intuit. He was able to transfer the company's business structure from North America desktop software company to a global cloud-based platform with portfolio that included TurboTax, QuickBooks, and Mint. This transformation was built on innovation and culture. And that culture is what embodies him from his upbringing and from his roots from West Virginia. He succeeds Dr. Gilbert. I will tell you that I've known Brad a long, long time, and it's probably one of the greatest privileges I've ever had to talk about Marshall hiring Brad Smith and introducing Brad Smith as the Marshall president. But let me talk a couple things about Marshall. Marshall is focused on academic programs like aviation, cybersecurity, and especially agriculture, and they are going to be offering the in-demand careers of the future. They recently, a few years ago, were given the Research 2 category of institutions. That's putting you in the 6% portion of the universities in the United States. Those are big. But what I can tell you, in knowing Brad Smith the way I know Brad Smith, the future is so bright that it's going to be unbelievable. These kinds of things and these accolades and the accomplishments that Marshall has made will pale in comparison what will happen with Marshall under his leadership. So I just say support this resolution and support this great university as they lead us into the new transformation in West Virginia. Thank you.
So further discussion. Senator from Cabell.
Thank you. First of all, I seek unanimous consent that the eloquent remarks by the senior senator from the 5th be placed and printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Proceed.
Now, briefly, I know lately when I get up, I can see people in the room, and Wolfel's getting ready to get off on a rant again. I will simply say, spring semester, introduction to speech, Dr. Bruce Greenwood, Marshall University, spring semester 1972. Thank you.
Further remarks. Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you can tell by my jacket today, I'm a huge supporter of my alma mater, Marshall University. It's helped me so much with my interpersonal skills, you know, the group presentations that I had to sit through and meet with others and work on my interpersonal skills just helps me every day in what I do. And I want to make President Smith welcome here and appreciate himself and everything that everyone at Marshall does. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Boone.
Mr. President, I rise in support of this resolution, and I want to take a caveat with regard to the School of Medicine that graduated its first class in 1981, and I was in the second graduating class in 1982. That was a part of the 5 new medical schools in America associated with the VA system. And I tell you that there's been some fantastic physicians, maybe even present company excluded, but there's been some fantastic physicians that have graduated from Marshall and gone on to become leaders in their fields. And its primary goal, of course, was to educate West Virginians who would actually practice in West Virginia. And there's a long line of us who went back to our smaller towns and remained there 40 years later. So a little gray hair tighter now. When we come in and see our patients, they trust us that we know what we're talking about, Mr. President, that we don't look as young as we once did. That said, it's just an incredible learning experience. When I was there, we didn't have a lot of residents to compete with, so as a first and second and third year medical student, we were doing things that upper level residents in other schools were allowed to do. So we kind of got a head start in clinical medicine. The town-gown relationship with regard to the physicians there in town that were helping to teach, besides the really good faculty in basic sciences, was phenomenal. So it's been a great run, it's been a great success, and I'm so proud to be an alum of the second graduating class, Marshall University School of Medicine, the Joan C. Edwards School of Medicine. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senior Senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the spirit of what we have going on with COVID, let's make sure that we do something that a person that doesn't need any introduction, but I'd like for him to stand and let's give him a warm welcome, Brad Smith.
Further discussion? If not, the question is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. Further resolutions.
Senate Resolution 21, congratulating Jeff and Janet Allen for winning the Conservation Farm of the Year Award.
Senator from Brooke.
Mr. President, request unanimous consent that the resolution be brought up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 21, congratulating Jeff and Janet Allen for winning the Conservation Farm of the Year Award.
Question is on adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? Senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of myself and the Senator from Ohio and the Senator from Marshall and the Senator from Wetzel County, it's our pleasure to welcome the recipients of the Conservation Farm of the Year Award, and that is Jeff and Janet Allen of Marshall County, and they are seated behind us in the President's Gallery. I had an opportunity to meet with them prior to the floor session today, and also had an opportunity to do a little research, Mr. President, on why they were very deserving to win this award, and I think that they are, in fact. The Allens, along with their daughter Kelsey, run a calf and cow operation in Marshall County. It's about 202 acres, and they've had that farm since 2006. It's called Meadow View Farm, Mr. President, and you think, well, what sets them apart from other farms that were up for this award, and why would they have won this award? And the reasons why are the efforts that they have undertaken for conservation as well as animal safety on their farm. In order to do this, the Allens replaced nearly 5 miles of fencing, and that's to ensure that their cattle stay out of the woods and streams and the crops and the surrounding area, but also to protect wild animals from getting caught in the fencing in the way that they install it. They rotate their grazing fields to ensure the viability of their land. They've undertaken a lot of efforts on soil erosion as well as reducing hay waste. And so I think all of that kind of goes into why they were recipients of this award, and I think they're very deserving. There's one last thing that I wanted to highlight, and it's something that has nothing to do with farming, Mr. President, in that I want to recognize Janet for her efforts and the work that she does for what's called the Ohio Valley Night to Shine. And that is an opportunity, an event in the Northern Panhandle for those with special needs who are over the age of 14 to get out and have a night for themselves, to get out and have the night that a lot of students enjoy in their high school years of going to the high school prom, junior and senior year. And these individuals have the opportunity to do that through this program. And I think it's a wonderful event that Janet helps to put on. And I think that they need to be recognized not just for this award, but also for her efforts with that event as well. I urge adoption of the resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? If not, question is on adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 2 relating to unemployment benefits program.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 2 be moved to the foot of bills on third reading.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to revise my motion. I would like to request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 2 be moved to the conclusion of Senate Bill 3.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 3 requiring work search activities to qualify for unemployment benefits. The bill is advanced to third reading with the right to amend.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Lindsay moved to amend the bill on page 3, section 1D, after line 34.
Junior Senator from the 8th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment instead of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Right. Junior Senator from the 8th.
During the Judiciary's committee meeting considering Senate Bill 2, Scott Atkins, the Commissioner of Workforce, gave some very important testimony in consideration of both Senate Bill 2 and 3. One of the aspects of his testimony that I thought very important, and when we consider unemployment benefits, how the system works, what's good for workers, how we can get people back in the workforce. He testified that that workforce works with those who are unemployed with their first 6 weeks out, connects them with people for training, connects them for people to learn different skills, connects them to people who can offer them jobs. That stops after 6 weeks. He also testified that the great many of people, the majority of people who get reemployed following unemployment, get reemployed within those first 6 weeks. And I don't believe that's a coincidence. And so what this amendment does is it simply requires workforce to provide the same type of resources, the same type of connections, the same type of things that folks need to get back on their feet for 12 weeks instead of 6 weeks. I believe this particular amendment justifies and satisfies some of the things that were said on the floor yesterday with the intent of getting people back to work. And if that is truly the goal of both Senate Bill 2 and 3, then I ask you to, and if you believe that, then I ask you to support this amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would rise in opposition to the amendment, and one of the reasons is we know that Senate Bill 3 did have a fiscal note with it. That fiscal note came in said to be about $4,500 in order to implement the software to go through and provide the tracking and services that Senate Bill 3 affords. Going from 6 weeks to 12 weeks is doubling the services that personnel provide within workforce. So it would stand to reason that the cost could also double, and not having that in front of us, I would pose the gentleman's amendment.
Is there further discussion? Junior Senator from the 16th. Junior Senator from the 16th is recognized for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President. In this bill, it requires, and this is Chapter 21A, Article 6, Section 1D, and it begins on page 3. It's line 26 of SB 3. It requires, the commissioner shall, it says it requires an individual at the time of application for unemployment benefits and weekly thereafter to provide proof of his and her work search activities, verifying submission of proof of work activities by individuals applying or receiving unemployment benefits, and determining any individual who fails to perform work search activities or provide proof of work search activities as required by this section ineligible to receive unemployment benefits unless the individual can reasonably explain his or her.
Senator from Jefferson.
My question is...
Senator from Jefferson, one moment. We are discussing an amendment, not the bill.
All right. Sorry, I will wait for the bill. Sorry.
Further discussion before the junior senator from the 8th closes. Junior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As far as the costs, I'll just direct you, the chamber, to a couple things. One, any money that's needed to extend from 6 weeks to 12 weeks can be taken from the cost savings from unemployment. Two, the testimony from Scott Atkins is workforce. The entire agency only receives $56,000 a year from the state government. So any cost that this would have on the budget, I think, would be negligible and could be made up through federal grants that the workforce already receives. This is good policy. If you believe that the problem in West Virginia is folks aren't getting back to work, and if the testimony was, as it was by Mr. Atkins, that people are put back to work in the first 6 weeks when we assist them, when we give them resources, then adding another 6 weeks in order to get more people to work is good, sound policy. And I ask for the support, and I ask for a roll call, Mr. President.
Yeas and nays have been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. Question is on adoption of the amendment offered by the junior senator from the 8th. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 11 yeas, 23 nays, 0 absent, not voting. Less than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the amendment rejected. Further amendments.
Senator Stallings moved to amend the bill on page 4, section 1D, lines 57.
Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Boone.
Mr. President, the amendment basically deals with part-time versus non-suitable. The way the bill is written now, it has to do with person seeking part-time work could continue to potentially receive some unemployment compensation. My amendment would basically change that to people could look for a non-suitable job instead of a part-time in order to still continue to receive unemployment benefits. It still requires people to seek employment in a suitable position in order to keep getting their unemployment benefits while they work. An example would be, it would not require a lineman, a coal miner, or crane operator to take a part-time position, whatever position they could find while they look for their job back, a suitable job. If they get laid off and can't find a local job, they could still take a position 60 miles away. While that distance may make a job non-suitable, keeping their unemployment benefits would help them mitigate their travel costs while they look for a job closer to home or more suitable. Or if someone could take a position with a massive pay cut going from, say, $50,000 to $30,000, while that massive decrease in salary could make a job non-suitable, my amendment would encourage them to take the job, re-enter the workforce, but still get their wages and unemployment benefits to mitigate their lower income. We have legal definitions of what criteria make a job suitable or non-suitable. This amendment makes sense. It gets people back into the workforce. It does it fairly, and I urge a yes vote on my amendment.
Is there further discussion? Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, would the senator from Boone yield?
Will the senator yield? The senator yields.
Thanks, Senator. So I want to make sure I clearly understand the intent of your amendment, because I want to go the language that's there now and then question you a little bit about the non-suitable piece of it. So the line that this goes in on the bill, this is on page 4, and start me on which line it is again.
It's section G, and it's lines 57 through 60.
Okay, so this says here, says a position, it says, or otherwise accept part-time employment for which the wages are less than his or her weekly benefit rate, shall continue to receive unemployment benefits without reduction of those wages for the duration of this benefit period. So I want to make sure that the intent of G is maintained, so I'm going to kind of make sure that we understand the same thing as what that intent is. Do you take the intent of G to be that we don't want somebody who's taking a less compensable job to lose their benefits while they're still looking to get a job that is just as compensable? So would you agree that that's the intent of that section G?
It is, and it's simply changing part-time, which is in the bill now, to non-suitable job. It still allows the unemployed worker to again, take whatever the non-suitable job is, and I think there is a definition for that, instead of a part-time. Non-suitable could include part-time, I believe.
So my concern is, and this is, I'm looking at the question here, so if somebody actually got non-suitable as, by definition, it could be by locality and it could be by skill set. So if a person were to take somebody, a job that is out of locale, out of skill set, but it pays substantially more, then they could, I think with your amendment, still have a job that pays them substantially more and then still receive an unemployment benefit at its full amount.
Yeah, I think it's up to the workforce folks to say whether that is a suitable or non-suitable job. They could waive the criteria.
Okay, I'll speak to the amendment. I would disagree, I think, Mr. President, with the gentleman's interpretation of the amendment here. As I read it, it says that otherwise except non-suitable employment shall continue to receive his or her full benefit without a reduction. So that does not leave it to discretion at that point. That is a shall in there. I would oppose the gentleman's amendment.
Is there further discussion? Does the senator from Boone wish to close? Senator Boone, you're recognized to close debate. Nobody else showed discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, suitable is basically what is not suitable would be if a position is offered, is vacant due directly to a strike, lockout, or labor dispute. If the wages, hours, and other conditions of the work offered are substantially less favorable to the individual than those prevailing for similar work in the locality. If the condition is being employed, the individual, if as a condition of being employed, the individual would be required to join a company, union, or to resign or refrain from joining from a bona fide labor organization. Again, we're not talking about that. This basically would allow a person to continue to receive unemployment benefits even if they take an unsuitable job, which is defined, and they could still receive their unemployment compensation while they look for a suitable job. And I urge adoption.
Roll call has been demanded. Is demand sustained? The demand is sustained. Question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment offered by the senator from Boone. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 11 yeas, 23 nays, 0 absent, not voting. Less than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the amendment rejected. The bill will, are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be re-engrossed, and the question is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 4th. Wait. Clerk will read the bill a third time.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 3 requiring work search activities to qualify for unemployment benefits. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 3 is one of a couple bills that are brought up before us because of West Virginia's ranking with regards to the cost of unemployment to employers as we try to attract businesses to West Virginia. And just to start off with the importance of that, to give a measure of it, the United States Department of Labor and Statistics has data that they produce every year that ranks the cost to employers or their tax system for providing unemployment. So if we go back to pre-pandemic in 2019, depending on if you're looking at total wages or percentage of taxable wages, as a percentage of total wages in 2019, West Virginia was the 7th most expensive state in the country with regards to unemployment benefits. And if you went to just a percentage of their taxable wages, we were number 8. Now, the number to go by there that gives the most apples-to-apples comparison is the percentage of your total wages. In this past year, 2021, that number changed. We went from number 7 as far as the most expensive state to the 3rd most expensive state in the country. Now, coming here soon, we're anticipating seeing a 25% reduction in that rate, and that takes us down to the 13th most expensive state in the country. Still not acceptable for attracting industry. So these bills that are coming before us, Senate Bill 3 and the one we'll discuss later, are extremely important for job development and job sustainability in West Virginia. So what this does, Senate Bill 3 creates the Jobs and Reemployment Act. It modifies the manner unemployed persons seek work. The new requirements would allow an individual to remain eligible for unemployment if they could conduct 4 work search activities per week. There are 10 activities that would constitute the work search. These range from registering with various job sites, applying with persons who you know are hiring, applying for participating in employment training, and taking civil service exams. The bill also places certain requirements on Workforce West Virginia to verify these activities. The Commissioner is also given the ability, if the individual fails to successfully complete work search activities, to render an individual ineligible for benefits. The Commissioner is also tasked with using existing resources to facilitate an individual's job search. This would include sharing open positions from the Division of Personnel and making a connection with employers with open positions. An individual is required to apply within 1 week of any job referred to the individual by Workforce. Employers are required to report refusals of employment by any individual receiving benefits. The bill has provisions that individuals who accept a referral to a part-time position where the wages are less than the weekly benefit rate is entitled to continue to receive benefits without a reduction. There are exceptions for jury service, military service, vocation training, and for persons who work out of a union hall that refer persons for employment. Applicants for benefits are to be given notice of the new requirements to seek work. The Commissioner is granted rulemaking authority, and the bill has an effective date of January 1, 2023. Mr. President, I do urge passage of the bill, and I would like to reserve the right to close debate.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Junior Senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a question on the section about proof of doing work searches. The requirement requires an individual who is applying for unemployment to provide proof. This is Chapter 21A, Article 6, Section 1D, and it's found on page 3, line 26. They have to verify submission of proof of work search activities by individuals applying or receiving unemployment, and determine any individual who fails to perform work search activities provide proof of work search activities as required by this section to be ineligible to receive unemployment benefits. My question is, we have a lot of people who do not...
Senator from Jefferson, do you wish the senior senator from the 4th to yield?
Yeah. Is he asking me?
Senator.
Yes.
Senior senator from the 4th, will you yield? Senator yields. Now
Yes.
you can ask your question.
Okay, my question is, I'm not going to repeat everything I said because I know you heard it. My question is, we have a lot of people who do not have the technology to do this. They don't have iPhones or access to the kind of technology you need to do a lot of the searches, which are online. My question is, how are they going to be able to provide proof, which is a requirement of this bill?
So that, Senator, I appreciate your question, and that specific question was asked in the Finance Committee of the Deputy Director of Workforce. And the question, the bill addresses that in a couple ways. The first way is the broad rulemaking authority that the Commissioner has. Second thing he says that the proof, the way that proof is described in there is not defined within the statute. The Deputy Commissioner, when he was in there, said that proof could be an attestation. And to the second part of your question with regards to technology, that was also brought up because of potential areas of the state that may or may not have access to broadband or a close workforce development office that's close to them to where they could walk in person, is that the Deputy Commissioner said that, you know, they already handle those type of issues, and this doesn't really change that because it's also, they can do it by phone. Somebody can call in regularly as well for that same level of assistance that they would do with the other searches. So it's there's those concerns that you're asking about are addressed in the bill, and they were addressed in Finance Committee, and apparently for the vote that came out of committee, addressed successfully.
It seemed, may I continue a question here? It seemed that the folks at DHHR said they really don't have the capability to deal with it for people who have gone unemployed, for example, beyond 6 weeks, that they don't have the technology necessarily to comply with this.
So first of all, it's not DHHR. This goes through workforce. And then workforce development, the bill provides for, it has a $4,500 fiscal note that actually puts the technology in place along with federal grants.
Technology in place for the employee or the administration?
For workforce development to be able to push this stuff to the people who are on unemployment.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Junior Senator from the 8th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator from the 4th yield?
Will the senator yield? The senator yields.
Yes, sir. I think you covered this in explaining the bill, but I just want to make sure I understand this, that the effect of this bill we'll see an increase in the unemployment fund, correct? That's the effect.
It'll strengthen the unemployment fund, that's correct. So overall, because the more heavily that's funded, the less risk there is.
Yeah, the effect is it'll increase the unemployment fund because this bill outlays, I would say obstacles, but at least hoops for folks to jump through in order to get the unemployment benefit. You'd agree with that too?
I don't know that I would frame it as hoops to jump through. I would say that anybody who's doing a work search activity, that it's asked that those people actually go through a job hunt, and it lays out what those job hunts or job training could be.
Well, it adds burden then, maybe not hoops. There are more things for an applicant for unemployment benefits to do. You would agree with that?
Sorry, say that again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Whether it's hoops, burdens, however you want to frame it, in order to receive the unemployment benefit, this bill requires folks to do more than what they do today.
Not necessarily. It clarifies it because the standard in current law is very vague. So I'll give you an example. What it does, there's a strikeout on page 1 of the bill on line 9, that the part that it says that it's replacing, the language it's replacing says, doing that which a reasonably prudent person in his or her circumstances would do in seeking work. And so now it goes down, it talks about actively seeking work being defined in 21A 61D. That goes down to the things that we just delineated, which you're defining as jumping through hoops. What I'm saying is I would not classify that as because as one of the things that this bill seeks to do is to reduce fraud and abuse in the unemployment system, and one of the ways that fraud and abuse is permitted by current statute is that is not well defined.
I have an amendment on fraud and abuse in the next bill, but to my point, what this bill does is it requires an applicant to do 4 activities in job search a week versus 1. That's correct, right?
No, that's not correct. It requires 4 versus a vague definition.
4 versus what?
A vague definition. The part on page 1, line 9, that language replaces says, doing that which a reasonably prudent person in his or her circumstances would do in seeking work. It don't define how many items. It just has a vague thing as far as what a prudent person would seek. This takes away that discretion and puts specific things that need to be done.
How many job searches do you have to do today?
You may not, is it? It's not listed in this statute. All it says is that do that which a reasonably prudent person in his or her circumstances would do in seeking work.
Do you know how much workforce requires?
I believe it's 1 a week in rule, but I do not know that for sure in front of me.
And what does this bill require?
This requires 4 job search activities.
So I'm correct. There's more of a burden, more hoops, more things that people have to do in order to get unemployment benefits. We're going from 1 to 4. If we can at least agree on that, let's have a good debate about this bill.
This goes from 1 activity for opportunity to get a job to making sure that they have 4 opportunities to find a job.
And that's my only point. I don't argue necessarily with the intent, but it's taken us 10 minutes just to get everyone on board on what we're talking about here. And I just want to make sure I understand, as I read the bill, it's 4 job activities a week versus 1, which is more for folks to do when they apply for unemployment benefits and then, of course, obviously get a job. So we're on the same page, aren't we?
I believe that statement I'll agree with you on.
Okay, thank you. And we've
That's
already
not what was stated, just to say when you started.
I think I've been pretty clear. So the effect of the bill is to increase the unemployment fund, which would then decrease the unemployment tax on business. You agree with that?
That in itself is not where it reduces the tax, because this is risk-based. And so the fund improves as it's utilized less, but there's also the risk that current statute permits for the fraud, waste, and abuse that can happen around unemployment, which is those several factors. And if you go in, you start to read the things that actually influence the unemployment insurance or unemployment tax, depending on the state. It's not just your unemployment fund. And that's the reason we're only seeing a 25% reduction, is because our fund has went up and we're really good on the fund. But we're still going to be, at the very best, 13th in the country if we get to 25%. So there's other things that make an unemployment system have risk, and the bill addresses those things as well.
Sure, but if you have fewer people receiving unemployment benefits with the increase in the fund, you would have there may be several factors, but a big factor would be a decrease in the unemployment tax.
It's definitely a big factor. It's one of the reasons we're seeing a 25% reduction coming
Sure.
at us, is because we've been able to see a better unemployment rate. So that's as far as the unemployment rate has dropped. And with that's dropped, our funds improved, and so we're seeing a decrease in that.
Well, sure. You bring up a good point. The unemployment rate's very good right now, isn't it?
It is.
I think there are about 8,000 folks on unemployment, last I checked. About right?
I think it's actually it's around closer to 7,000.
Oh, even better, closer to 7,000. And that's with 26 weeks of unemployment that we have in place today.
That's correct.
Mr. President, thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. I'd like to speak to the bill.
Proceed, Junior Senator from the 8th.
Yes, Mr. President, I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 3. As has been stated on this floor, the unemployment levels are some of the best the state's ever seen, at a close to 7,000 folks unemployed, at around 3.5% unemployment, and that's with the system that we have in place today. That's with 26 weeks of unemployment. And I'll add to that when we get to Senate Bill 2, I'll say it again, but I'll say it right now. The testimony was from Mr. Atkins at Workforce, West Virginia Workforce, that the majority of people get employed within 6 weeks of unemployment. And that's a coincidence and a consequence of the fact that we give people help. We give them resources. There are very few people that even get to 26 weeks. I see no reason for this bill. We should be in the business of helping West Virginia and addressing real problems. And this particular bill addresses a problem that doesn't exist, and the only argument that I've heard for it is it reduces taxes on business. That's it. It doesn't employ more people. It doesn't help more people. It's just a tax giveaway. Mr. President, I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in opposition to this bill. We're assuming that laid off workers, unemployed workers, are just fraught with fraud and abuse in West Virginia. I didn't hear that from Workforce West Virginia. We just assume that everybody that's on unemployment compensation is a criminal, someone who is gaming the system. somehow. And the Junior Center from the 16th makes some very important findings in that we do not have a lot of technology, particularly in certain areas of the state. Whether you have broadband or not, this is going to put undue hardship on people who are laid off that have to do all these 4 things a week in order to get some unemployment compensation. We're not tech savvy enough, and this just flies right in the face of the unemployed worker in West Virginia. I don't see a lot of people gaming the system. I don't think the data shows that either, and urge no vote on this bill.
Further discussion. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of this bill. I think for the people that may be getting confused at home, this thing can really be divided into looking at 2 main issues. Number one, when somebody is lost their job, that's a pretty devastating thing to have to go through. And so people that find themselves unemployed can really be kind of divided into 2 buckets. One of those would be those that are looking for a job and trying to get back to work, and those that may not be that serious about that. So what we hear from employers all across the state is that currently, under our current situation and guidelines, that they'll get 50 applications and they'll get 3 people show up for an interview. Because as long as you've just so much as filled out an application, you meet requirements, you're going to get unemployment. But the question is are those individuals serious? Now, how much of those are gainfully really wanting to get back into the workforce and those are not, I don't know. But those 2 types of individuals do exist. And so what this bill does is tries to say, listen, we want to help you. We want to help you get back on your feet. We certainly want to support you. But we want you to actually be getting back to the workforce. And so in putting some provisions in here just to clarify what's already currently supposed to be happening in code. I mean, Mr. President, if you just look at some of the things that the bill talks about, it says, hey, you should be applying for a job. You should be looking online. Look for use reemployment services. Complete applications, maybe go for training, go for education. I mean, these are all kind of no-nonsense type things for somebody that's trying to get gainful employment. The other thing it does for those that are truly wanting to get back in the workforce and get a job back, this gives them more tools, helps the government get more involved to try to help them get placement so that they can get those jobs they want. The second part that's really important that this bill addresses is that when you lose your job, that is, again, one of the most gut-wrenching, scary things for most individuals to have to go through. Yes, they can get unemployment currently, but it is typically a smaller percentage. Now, most of us live our means to what we're making, and you get accustomed to what you're making, and that you get accustomed to that type of lifestyle. When you suddenly find yourself unemployed, it's a scary proposition not to be able to make your bill. So what this bill does that is second to none in the country, no other state has tried to do this, and that is, yes, you can go be getting part-time work while fully getting your full unemployment. No state does that, Mr. President. So yes, this doesn't maybe get you back to your full employment level, but if you can get your full employment income, if you can get full unemployment plus keep every dime you're making in part-time work, but still allow you time to go find that full-time job to get back to the full employment levels that you were before, that's what this bill does. So again, there's 2 important pieces. One, those that aren't as serious about employment, we put some guidelines in here, so if there is some fraudulent activities, it just kind of tightens that up for the taxpayer, while at the same time really reinforcing and helping those that are trying to get that employment. And 2, and what I feel is the most important part, the reason why that I am sponsor on this bill, is it helps those people that are in a very scary situation get funded with everything they can do while working part-time jobs, keep their full-time unemployment, to help protect them as much as possible until they can get to that full-time employment threshold. And so for that reason, I support the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I listened to workforce testimony about these unemployment bills that we've got before us today, and one thing really stood out to me. The question was asked, well, what are the main reasons that folks become unemployed? Because if that's the point of this, is to get folks back to work, well then let's ask the question and get to the root of the problem. What's the reason that folks become unemployed? And the two things that I remember very clearly in testimony were child care and transportation. And I think we could probably agree to that with our life experience. The reason that folks become unemployed is child care and transportation. Now the bill before us, which apparently tries to remedy putting folks back to work, doesn't have anything to do with the real barriers. The real barriers are child care and transportation. There were a couple of amendments offered that could have helped get at that issue as best we could. Those were not adopted. If we're concerned about getting folks back to work, let's listen to the facts and let's respond to the real problem: child care and transportation. Since that is not addressed in this bill, can in good conscience support it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion before I recognize the senior senator from the 4th to close. Senator from Jefferson, junior senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have some problems with this bill. I will be voting against it, partly on the issue of providing proof. A number of our people do not have the technology that so many of our jobs you apply online. They don't have that kind of technology that they can do that. How do you prove it? Do you take a picture of it? With what? How do they do that? With a camera? Or I find that very difficult. And any individual who prepares to perform the job activities, the work search activities, or proof becomes ineligible to receive any kind of unemployment benefits. So I think this really disadvantages. We've talked about the issue of the lack of the ability to do this kind of search in many parts of our state. I'm not sure this Workforce West Virginia says that it is not unusual for an employer to fail to tell Workforce why a worker's employment with the employer was ended. What happens to those folks if the employer just doesn't get with Workforce on these things? I think there are a lot of problems with this bill, and in my mind, unemployment insurance is insurance to make you whole. It's not something to punish people. And I don't think most of the people in our state are trying to game the system. They're merely trying to survive and comply with all these rules. And I think some of the rules in this bill make it almost impossible for our people to comply. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion. Senior senator from the 4th to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to address a couple things because I think it's been explained very, very well by the senior senator from the 17th. There's a couple things I think that we should still speak to. One is what really improves access to child care and being able to have transportation is having employers that are very close to you. And one of the things that prevents West Virginia from all over our state from having employers very close to them is one of those things that we've been checking off one thing after the next, after the next, after the next since 2015 are barriers to businesses entering West Virginia. The unemployment cost to business is very, very high. I explained that when I started it. We are in presently 3rd highest in the country. And when you start looking at risk to a business when you go in, that has to be considered. It was said yesterday on the floor, Mr. President, I believe by you, we talked about how the terrain here in West Virginia itself is a challenge to bring business to West Virginia. So we really have to play to our strengths, and we have to be really, really, really better at the things that we can improve upon than other states to be competitive. So when you start looking at things where you're non-competitive, man, that should stand out. If we're in the top 10 of the country for cost, for unemployment, that should stand out to every single one of us. And it should encourage us to make changes to the system we currently have to improve that. This bill is a lot of help to West Virginians who become unemployed in several ways. One, it's very forward-looking. It's forward-looking in that we're removing a barrier so we have more employers here. If we got more employers here, we got more opportunities for jobs. You got more opportunity to be employed. This bill checks one of those boxes to help that happen. The other thing is that I think that really just went right by the discussion, and I want to really focus some attention to it. We hear in our committees here in the Senate, especially in finance, because we hear about how many FTEs is a state agency budgeted for. How many full-time employees is a state agency budgeted for? And we have thousands of open positions within state government. We have Department of Highways that lacks employees. We have Child Protective Services that lacks employees. We have many things throughout DHHR and the other agencies, even revenue. You know, it's the things that you have, these professionals, the engineers, all those things in our state agencies. We got job after job after job that we can't fill. We also have an agency called Workforce that is there to help get the people who are unemployed paid while they're working to look for a job. And we facilitate that in a very, very specific way, aside from everything that was discussed within this bill, is that we are requiring Workforce to connect somebody who is on unemployment with the Department of Personnel to all those open positions across the entire state where state employees work, and say, here is a job that matches your income, your skill set, and where you live. Go apply for it today, and we can get you employed tomorrow. I've not seen that anywhere. The other thing is that it was mentioned, and extremely powerful, is that we're going to continue not only to pay you while you work to look for a job, we're also not going to penalize you for working part-time while you're also doing that while in the time that you're unemployed. Mr. President, I do expect this bill will significantly change West Virginia's position on that list that I told you. I look forward to seeing West Virginia going from one of the 10th most expensive to the least expensive in the United States of America. And that's a fun bill to vote on. I urge adoption of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results on this question. 23 yeas, 11 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 2 relating to unemployment benefits program. Third reading of the bill. The bill is advanced to third reading with the right to amend.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Lindsay moved to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause.
Junior Senator from the 8th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Junior Senator from the 8th.
Yes, Mr. President. What my amendment simply does is strike everything after the Unemployment Insurance Program Integrity Act. I think everyone can agree here in this chamber, while we may disagree on how long folks should get benefits, we can agree on the fact that waste, fraud, and abuse should be cracked down upon. In fact, during the testimony during the consideration of Senate Bill 2 in front of Senate Judiciary, Scott Atkins mentioned that the biggest problem was with independent contractors who failed to provide satisfactory documentation. What my amendment does is it identifies the problem that truly does exist in West Virginia, that it takes care of, and gets rid of the bad actors that take advantage of the unemployment system. I urge support of the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there discussion? Senator from Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to the amendment offered by my esteemed colleague from the 8th District. I think he is accurately described his amendment as I read it. It would leave in the bill the language that is in the bill before us that relates to fraud and efforts within workforce to beef up their activity to prevent fraudulent claims. But what the amendment does is it strikes, as I read it, the balance of the bill. It strikes from the bill the provisions contained in the bill regarding indexing. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, Mr. President, and why I think that's important. It's an important provision in this bill. And let me just start, if I may, with some general comments about where we are. The esteemed finance chair made some really good and important points about how expensive the unemployment insurance program is in West Virginia for employers. And when you think about it, it really is extraordinary. It's extraordinary that we're in the top 10, maybe top 5 now, third. He's giving me the hand signal, third most expensive. And here's why I believe it's extraordinary, if you think about it, Mr. President. As we stand here today, for the first time in my life, Mr. President, we have more jobs available in West Virginia than can be filled by workers available to fill them. My whole life, I'm not quite as old as you, but we're very close, Mr. President. My whole life, I've heard we need jobs. We need jobs in West Virginia. We don't have jobs. And it may still be true, but it's different now. It's different today in a way that it's ever been before. The numbers are undeniable. We have, as we've heard, fewer than 8,000 people drawing unemployment benefits in the state of West Virginia right now. Think about that. A state of 1.8 million people, fewer than 8,000 people receiving unemployment checks in the state of West Virginia right now. We have the lowest unemployment in West Virginia, the lowest unemployment rate, Mr. President, we've ever had in the history of this state. Our unemployment rate is lower than the national unemployment rate. I dare say that over the course of my lifetime has been a circumstance we perhaps had never seen, but we've not seen frequently. So with those circumstances, we have an unemployment program that is among the most expensive in the country. Think about that. So the amendment offered by the junior senator from the 8th would remove from the bill the indexing provisions of the bill. And I think they're very important, not so that we're not looking backward, Mr. President. And you spoke to some of these issues yesterday on the floor very well, I thought. We have to look forward to change. Things have changed in West Virginia, and in many ways they've changed for the better. And we need to look forward and project for this state how we're going to structure every aspect of government, our unemployment program, our tax code, many things. I think indexing of the unemployment benefits, the duration of those benefits, is an important component of looking forward, planning for our future here in West Virginia. We have, right now, without the bill, if you go on unemployment, you can draw for 26 weeks. What's magic about 26 weeks? It's half of a year. It's an arbitrary number that was picked by a previous legislature. In the old way that the system has been run, states are making changes to that now and recognizing that how long a person may need to be on unemployment is related to, and we would agree with this, would we not? It's related to the availability of jobs in the economy. So this bill, as it's before us, would adopt a system of indexing. Now, it's not something we just created here in West Virginia, Mr. President, made up. It's been tried and done in other states. Florida, Georgia, North Carolina rescued their unemployment programs with the implementation of this, but there are a total of 9 states, according to the data I've seen, Mr. President, that tie the duration of unemployment benefits to the unemployment rate, the state's overall unemployment rate. And in addition to Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina, those states include Alabama, Arizona, Idaho, Kansas, Massachusetts, North Carolina, I said North Carolina, Tennessee. That's what this bill will do, unless the amendment offered by the senator from the 8th is adopted, in which event it will not do that. But what the bill says, if we reject the amendment, is that instead of just flat 26 weeks for everybody who files for unemployment, the length of time you can draw unemployment will be tied to the state's overall unemployment rate, from a maximum of 20 weeks down to 12 weeks. Now, neither of those, as Arkansas has a lower maximum than 20 weeks right now. It has 16 weeks. But Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina are the model for what is in this bill that would be taken out if we adopt the amendment offered by the senator from the 8th. The bill recognizes that the length of time a person needs to be unemployment is related to the number of jobs that are available in the economy. And we're in a period right now, Mr. President, where we have record availability of jobs. There are way more jobs waiting for people to take them than there are people on unemployment who could take them, drawing unemployment benefits now. We have, the data we heard from Workforce was that the average length of a time on unemployment for people who had to go on unemployment, the average in West Virginia in the last quarter of last year was about 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Now, we're not going anywhere down to 6 weeks in this indexing. The minimum is 12. No matter what the unemployment rate is. The minimum would be 12 weeks, the maximum 20. That's a little bit lower than the 26 that's currently the law, but it's certainly justified, Mr. President, by the circumstances that exist here in West Virginia. Now, as the senator from the 4th eloquently said, we need to make our unemployment compensation system less expensive. That's a big part of being able to grow business, industry, the economy of this state. And this bill is designed to do that, but I fear its important purposes, or at least one of them, would be undermined if we adopt the amendment that has been offered by my friend and esteemed colleague from the 8th. So I would urge the amendment's rejection.
Is there further discussion? One sec. Senator from Cabell, did you want to be recognized? Okay. Junior Senator from the 8th to close.
No, Mr. President, I was going to ask unanimous consent that the senator from Morgan County yield.
The senator yields.
Certainly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I may have missed it, but did anyone testify in Senate Judiciary on Senate Bill 2 as far as how expensive the unemployment system is in West Virginia?
Actually, if there was testimony regarding that, there certainly wasn't much. Most of that is what was reported to us in remarks on the previous bill by the finance chair.
Yeah, I don't recall hearing that, and that's what I think that the testimony on the floor from the finance chair was that West Virginia had the third most expensive in the state of West Virginia. Is that what he said? Or 10th? Is that right?
Initially, now, initially, I believe what I recall from the remarks was that there were two metrics that were used, or traditionally are used, and in one we were 7th, one we were 8th, and then I think the 10th versus 3rd related to different chronology. One was in a quarter of last year, and then one's maybe after the 1st of this year.
Well, where do those numbers come from? Because again, they weren't testified to in Senate Judiciary.
Well,
where do the rankings come from?
We know that the unemployment insurance program in West Virginia is very expensive, and we hope. The level of premiums, and this is apart from this legislation, the level of premiums employers have to pay is tied in degree to the health of the trust fund, the Workforce Unemployment Trust Fund, and we believe, we have our fingers crossed, that there was going to be some relief for employers with respect to that this year.
I understand that's the intent, but I'm just trying to nail down when someone says we're the third most expensive, usually based upon X study or this journal or these numbers. I did not hear that. I'm just trying to figure out where those numbers come from.
Let me be clear. I am relying upon, and I'm happy and confident to do so, what I heard from the Senate Finance Chair.
Okay. Mr. President, could I ask the Senate Finance Chair or the Senator from the 4th to yield?
Sure. Senator from the 4th, will you yield?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, the Senator from Morgan. Senator, Mr. Finance Chairman, did you hear the question I asked?
I did, yeah. So that comes from, you can go to the United States Department of Labor, Employment and Training Administration. It's that you go through there and they have year by year. It'll look like this when you pull up their PDF. It's 3 columns. That goes through, and it has a taxable wage base, taxable wages, and total wages, and then the percentage relative to what they spend on unemployment for those. And so when you look at unemployment, tax, or insurance cost, these are the metrics that are used.
Okay. Was that testimony that you've talked about here today while we're voting on 3rd reading, was that provided during consideration of, I guess, Senate Bill 3?
No, that's not through testimony. That is straight off the website for the U.S. Department of Labor and Statistics.
Okay. And the only reason I ask is because we're talking about serious things. When we're talking about taking unemployment down from 26 to 12. And according to the Tax Foundation, West Virginia ranks 26 when it comes to unemployment insurance tax rank. So we're in the middle of the pack. According to that metric, and I guess where it really matters, we're in the middle of the pack. We're not the most expensive in the state as what's been suggested on here on the floor.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the Tax Foundations.
I mean, the Tax Foundation is not the Center for Budget and Policy, right? It's a conservative think tank. You'd agree with that?
I would agree with that. I would agree that they're definitely more conservative than the Center for Budget and Policy. It's not hard not to be. But however, this is straight from the federal government's website.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Did you have a question that I missed? Okay. I no longer yield. And I'd like to close unless there's someone else who wants to speak to the amendment.
Further discussion before I recognize the junior senator from the 8th to close. Junior senator from the 8th to close.
Yes, Mr. President. Again, I think that my amendment addresses a problem that we can all agree on, and that's waste and fraud in the unemployment system. I think that that's the issue that has been asked of us to address. I think from the discussion here today, when you combine it with Senate Bill 3 and now Senate Bill 2 on the amendment, again, the testimony or the facts that have been provided on the floor were not considered during committee, either in finance or judiciary. According to the Tax Foundation, we aren't the worst or most expensive unemployment system in the country. We're in the middle of the pack, 26th in the country. I would suggest that potentially those Bureau of Labor numbers, although we have not had an opportunity to review them, which would be nice in consideration of this bill, have more to do with the low wages in West Virginia than anything else that we can do with unemployment. And so if we want to tackle the true problem in this state and address unemployment, then I urge support of the amendment and ask for the yeas and nays, Mr. President.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment offered by the junior senator from the 8th. Yeas and nays have been demanded. Is demand sustained? The demand is sustained. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results on this question. 10 yeas, 24 nays, 0 absent, not voting. Less than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the amendment rejected. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of Senate Bill 2. As it lies before us now, the amendment having been rejected by the body, it is the committee substitute that was reported from the Committee on the Judiciary. We spent some time talking about the indexing provisions because that's what would have changed had the amendment been adopted. But let me go through a little bit of the rest of the bill. The bill would affect amendments to sections in Chapter 21A of the State Code and in Articles 2D and Article 3. And there are a number of sections that are amended, and there would be some new sections. The first part of the bill, in Article 2D, there are amendments to Section 2, which relates to unemployment insurance program integrity. Section 2A is new. That relates to automatic claim review. And Section 3 in that article is amended, and it relates to data sharing. Those sections are an effort to address what we all know happened in the early part of the pandemic when, for the first time ever, unemployment benefits were opened up to people who were not even employees. We had the federal government made it permissible for sole proprietors to file claims and receive unemployment benefits. And there was significant fraud, not just West Virginia, Mr. President, it happened all around the country as the United States government and the states were trying to make those benefits quickly available to people who were having to stop working and who had been working in businesses or enterprises that were closed due to the pandemic or closure orders. So a little bit of what those provisions are, and it's all good stuff, good for workforce, is going to have some new responsibilities on a monthly basis. They'll have to cross-check unemployment insurance rolls against state death records. I dare say I hope no one would have a problem with that. We're going to check and make sure that the people who are receiving unemployment benefits are actually not deceased. The workforce will be verifying the identity of claimants by methods including, but not limited to, verifying the identity of an applicant prior to awarding benefits and requiring multi-factor authentication as part of the online application. So the next section provides for automatic claim review. by workforce. And what this is designed to do is to have them focus on activities that are suspicious or potentially suspicious, like when you have multiple or duplicative claims that are coming off from the same IP address. It doesn't mean they're fraudulent, but it gives you a reason to look further, I think, and a little deeper. When you have multiple or duplicative claims that are associated with the same mailing address, or claims that are being paid to or associated to a single bank account, you know, that could be a red flag. And so we're, in this legislation, we're asking workforce to take note of that and to look. And if, you know, if you see unemployment benefits for a whole bunch of people that are going to a single bank account, it might mean that some further checking is warranted, looking into that. The biggest part of the bill is that which we've talked about at length, and so I won't belabor it. This will create an indexing system, Mr. President. We'll tie the duration of unemployment benefits in West Virginia to the state's overall unemployment rate, recognizing the basic principle that in periods of low unemployment, or stated conversely, periods of high job availability, unemployment benefits don't have to last as long as they do when jobs are more scarce. This would put West Virginia in line, as said, with 9 other states that have done it. This is the right time to do it. When unemployment is low in West Virginia now, as discussed, fewer than 8,000 people are drawing benefits today. Jobs are available throughout West Virginia in every community, village, burg. There are help wanted signs like we've never before seen in this state. And we hope that our economy will remain strong. You know, I realize that it's slightly off the subject because it was in the previous bill that we considered, but I have to go back and mention Senate Bill 3, which this committee, or this Senate, just sent to the House. For the first time in the history of the state, Mr. President, we're going to allow, if that bill becomes law, people who are on unemployment not to lose. They won't have to lose their unemployment benefits if they take a part-time job. You know, I've always thought that the way that thing has operated creates a disincentive for people to want to go to work. This creates a real incentive. You know, you can still draw the maximum unemployment benefit in West Virginia if Senate Bill 3 passes and take a part-time job and earn both without penalty. And as you said yesterday, Mr. President, on the floor, part-time jobs often evolve into full-time jobs. Again, that's not Senate Bill 2, that's Senate Bill 3. But these bills together, Mr. President, in conjunction with one another, are going to modernize our unemployment compensation system in West Virginia. We're going to be looking forward, not backward, not to the way we've always done it. We're going to plan for our future. And it's my hope, Mr. President, that this body will have the courage to do it. I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I've had a hard time with this bill and SB 3 because, you know, Democrat, Republican, Independent, we all want people to go to work. That's our goal. I've spent my entire public career trying to help create jobs and get people good paying jobs that they can support their families, not menial jobs, but jobs they can support their family and make a better life for their children. That's our goal. Who wants to be on unemployment? The maximum's $424 a week. The minimum's $24. Who'd want to live on that long term? We all want everybody to go back to work. You know, I heard somebody say all the things we've done since 2015. I was against a lot of those because I didn't believe they were going to create any jobs in West Virginia. And I think time's proven me right. Ending prevailing wage. We were going to get 2 schools for the price of 1. What we're getting is 1 that cost as much as 1 did before we got rid of prevailing wage, and we can't use it half the time because it's got too many flaws in it, because it's being built on a substandard fashion. We're sticking our kids in those schools. Right to work. They were going to flood across the border when we passed right to work. I heard our new friends in the steel industry say they came here from right to work, but they're not even a union shop. They have no union people. Right to work makes no difference to them. Lowering business taxes. We've given away hundreds of millions of dollars. Rolling back coal mine safety. I remember that fight when I first got here. Didn't want to have a track to the wall of the mine where somebody was going to get hurt bad and we're going to have to carry them out on our hands and knees. No new mining jobs because of that. We've rolled back water and air standards. And now, today, our workforce participation is less and our private jobs are less. I want some evidence. I want some evidence these 2 bills, particularly SB 2, is going to improve unemployment in the state. I just don't want to hope it's going to do that. Reducing the number of weeks is going to force people off the unemployment rolls, but is it going to reduce unemployment? Is it going to increase participation? I looked at the other states that do this. They had no significant change in workforce participation after they moved to 12 weeks. So why do we think it's going to work in West Virginia? My friend from Oregon mentioned there's only 8,000 people on unemployment. That's a low number. That's a low number coming off of COVID and everything else that's happened to this state in the past year in the country. That's a pretty darn low number. And when you look, almost 20% of those are construction workers who are off anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks every year because their industry shuts down. 4 to 6 months, I'm sorry, thank you. 4 to 6 months, if it's 6 months, do the math, it's 24 weeks. Where are they going to go? I got in my hand here jobs posted through Workforce West Virginia. They got almost 1,200 educational service jobs available. Too many construction workers going to go take that job. They've got a whole bunch of retail jobs that maybe SB 3 will be beneficial for, and I applaud that. I think the fraud provisions, I think putting people to work part-time and allow them to collect benefits, I think that's beneficial. Those are good things. I'm disturbed by cutting our unemployment period from 26 to 12 weeks. What are those people going to do? I've gotten dozens of emails and letters. Lady wrote, almost brought tears to my eyes, how during COVID, she couldn't find a job, and without 26 weeks of unemployment, her kids would have been on welfare. What good's that do us? We ended the COVID unemployment benefit last year. Unemployment didn't go down. Workforce participation didn't go up. Everybody said people weren't working because of that extra money. It didn't make any difference. When you look at The Economist, the National Bureau of Economic Research, the American Economic Journal, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they all say there's no significant change when you reduce workers' comp benefits. My friend from Oregon said the average period of time somebody's out on unemployment in West Virginia is 6 weeks. That's the average. That means changing it to 12 weeks won't make any difference as far as increasing workforce participation or decreasing unemployment, but it will affect the people that couldn't find jobs within the 12-week period. Mylan, pharmaceuticals is shut down. Those people were making $70,000 and $80,000 a year. I know somebody that was willing to take a job for $30,000 or above because that's what it took her to survive, and she just found one. What would she have done without unemployment? Again, I know we hope. I know you all hope. I know you think this is going to work. But what evidence is there that it's going to work? Now, unemployment saves folks. It saves folks from being on welfare. But here's what you got to think about. We've lost 70,000 people in the last decade. Who do you think those people are that are leaving? You think they're people that we want out of West Virginia? They're people who are mobile, who have looked and can't find jobs here and have run out of benefits, and they're going to go somewhere else. This is going to increase people's migration out of the state. We want people to stay. If it takes them 15 weeks, if it takes them 20 weeks to find a replacement job, we want to make sure they're secure until they're able to find a new job. If there's people that are, just piling on, just trying to drag out their unemployment, we can find ways to stop that. But you can't find ways to feed a child, to pay the rent, to pay your mortgage, to pay your car payment, if your benefits run out and you're unable to find a job. Now, Workforce West Virginia has done a good job. I've worked with the director. If there's a problem, they straighten it out. If there's somebody that they can figure out that shouldn't be getting benefits, they stop them. We should count on them to do that. COVID made it difficult. They were overwhelmed. Nobody anticipated that. But we can't rely on what happened during the COVID pandemic to guide our policy in the future. It's time we put the citizens of West Virginia first. Keep them here. Give them a reason to stay. We're creating these jobs. We got to create good jobs with good pay. We've got to put back in place the prestige of being a working person, of supporting your family. Not ask them to take a $12 an hour job when they gave up a $30 an hour job and say, if you don't do it, you're going to starve. We're going to lose more people, I think, with this bill. I've made up my mind listening to everybody. They're going to leave the state to find good work because they're not able to replace a miling job with a job at your local fast food store. I urge no vote on this bill, Mr. President.
Are there others wishing to speak to the bill? Chair recognizes the senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's somewhat personal to me, this bill, as a person who has been in the unemployment line a number of times. But before I want to speak on that bill, one thing I did do, I went to this manual, and it has the biographies of different people in the Senate. And I checked out their biographies to see what was their education level and what type of work they did. And I guess the question is, how do you identify with a person who has been in the unemployment line, and how do you make laws determining how many weeks of unemployment they should get if you yourself have never experienced the unemployment line? And that has always sort of boggled my mind about that, people making laws for other people when they cannot identify with them. We have doctors, lawyers, business people on the other side who may have never experienced the unemployment lines. Back in 1980, before Ronald Reagan became president, unemployment benefits were 52 weeks. And then you got extensions all the way up to 65 weeks. Maybe it was a more gentler time at that time, but when Ronald Reagan came in, he cut it to 26 weeks. And at that time, people were losing their homes, mortgages, all those things that were happening in this country. And even today, the question is, how can you make a bill to identify with people who are unemployed? I remember standing in an unemployment line in a little town called Barnesville. I was organizing people to a platform of benefits. It was a little, like a movie theater window that stood outside. It was pouring down snow. I mean, it was snowing. And at the time, coal miners that got laid off and steel workers, which I was a steel worker at the time, that got laid off. And there were men out there and women with their children standing in line waiting to get their unemployment and snow falling down. And that image has seared an image upon my mind. And I remember getting laid off from, I don't know, many of you might remember Ormat Corporation, aluminum smelting place in Ohio. And some of these men had never been laid off in their life. But I remember seeing these older men with tears in their eyes after so many years of working there. 26 weeks is not that long of a time to be laid off. But what really got me was a couple weeks ago, and I was totally shocked when Congressman McKinley was here. I went to the meeting that morning, and there was one of these delegates made a statement that, you know, in West Virginia, not working is a culture, as part of the culture of not working. And I was shocked that she said that not working is part of the culture of West Virginia. Let me tell you something. When I was working on my master's degree, I think there was a course called vocational psychology or something like that. What they found out, that West Virginians were the hardest working people they were. And when they would go to another state, people would hire West Virginians first. You name 9 states, most of them were like red states in the South. When West Virginia goes south and goes to work, they're given jobs because of our work ethic in West Virginia. When teachers leave West Virginia to other states, they are one of the most sought after commodities on the market now. That's why we don't have a lot of teachers. So this bill, to me, 26 weeks is not that long. I think there's a contradiction here also about the savings. If your unemployment rate was high already, so there's more money going out, but now it's low, so there's less money actually going out for unemployment. So that's where the contradiction comes in for me. So I just believe that these 26 weeks should remain there and not reduce to 12 weeks. I don't think it's long enough for a person to find a job. I want you to get out there and try to find a job in 12 weeks. Plus, if you live in a small community, if you have to find 4 different applicants, some of the same people in that community will be going to the same 4 people, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to find a job, especially in some more of these rural communities across the state of West Virginia. That's why I believe it would take at least 26 weeks at a minimum. In Europe, they give people a full year of full employment. But here, for some reason, we seem not to be as generous in this country as other countries are when it comes to the unemployed. And we seem to have an attitude of being more punitive towards the unemployed, like it's their fault that they're unemployed. You know, I've been lucky that I do have a lot of degrees, so it was a lot easier for me. But in West Virginia, we have, I think, the lowest degree rate in the country. And it's not as easy for a lot of people to find work as it may be for you, the people who may support this bill and cutting the number from 26 weeks to 12 weeks. And again, I'm against this bill.
Further discussion. Senator from Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I wanted to agree slightly, or at least partially, with the senator from Ohio. When people from West Virginia go outside of West Virginia, we are known as hard workers. And we're known to have a strong work ethic. We're known to be people who are willing to figure a way to get things done that need to be done. I'm somebody who had to leave the state of West Virginia myself at various times in my career in order to find work outside of the state. You know, to me, it was never an option to even think about sitting, you know, for a long period of time in West Virginia unemployed. And we may think, that's a terrible thing for somebody to have to leave West Virginia, and it's certainly not what we're shooting for. What we're shooting for is this growing economy that offers opportunity for all of our children right here at home. But if somebody does have to leave the state of West Virginia in order to find that employment, it's good to know that people outside of West Virginia can appreciate that we're producing a product here, our children quite often, that are high quality, good workers around the country, that we can find a job out there if that's what's necessary. And I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Again, we're trying to grow this economy, but just a little while ago, the entire Senate stood and applauded a man in the back of the room who frankly went outside and did even better than me. He's the president of Marshall now. He's a returnee, and that's pretty much what I am, as somebody who came back after being out there for a while and having success. He came back with even greater success. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think it's a very good thing that we have somebody who cares so much about where he came from, that he went out, he earned a great living, and he built or helped to build a great business out there, and then he came back home to West Virginia. Who knows what happens if he could have just sat here for an extended period of time? Who knows how long? How many weeks? 50 weeks? 100 weeks? Who knows what would have happened differently? And who knows what might happen differently if we're going to reward people for sitting here? Do I want them to leave? No, I don't want anybody to leave West Virginia in order to get a job. I want them to have a job right here. But frankly, if they have to leave, it's not the worst thing ever. And I hope they come back as soon as they can. So I support this legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Marion. Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly stand in opposition to this piece of legislation. I want to talk a little bit similarly to what the senator from Ohio talked about, and I really struggled with this when this bill first came out, because I have so much respect for everybody in this chamber, particularly my chairman that I've known for my entire career. But I thought about the people in this esteemed body, and you all have been blessed. I look around, I serve with so many professionals that have high degrees of education, successful businessmen and women, Mr. President, that I have the utmost respect for. But not many of us in this chamber have ever had to live on unemployment. I want to talk about a couple stories in my life. In 1968, I was 11 years old. My dad worked for the A&P Tea Company. Probably most people in here don't even remember that chain of grocery stores. He was a proud World War II veteran who quit school to go to the service and fight for our country. He worked in the auto industry for a while and came back to West Virginia and got a job and spent 21 years of dedicated service to that company. And I remember this like it was yesterday. He came home and told my mother that he was laid off. And he didn't know what we were going to do. All he had was a GED and a good work ethic. And I remember him sitting at that kitchen table where I never seen my dad cry except for that time. Didn't know what he was going to do. 48 years old, had to go look for work. And man, we struggled. Believe me, we struggled. I don't know if you all know what it's like to worry about paying the light bill, but my family knows that struggle. He went back into the coal mines at age 48 years old. 48! And he barely got a job there, Mr. President. We struggled and we struggled. But he finally got a job. And unemployment benefits kept us alive, kept us going while he struggled. And I'll never forget that. I only have a high school education, and I went into the coal mines shortly after high school. Got married in 1980, and contrary to popular belief, the coal mine industry goes up and down and has peaks and valleys regardless of who the president of this country is. It's always been that way. Tina and I got married in 1980, and we had our first child, and we were renting a little place out in the country. Came home from work, working the midnight shift, just a normal day. Was going to buy a house in the town I grew up in, was buying it off my aunt. And we was getting ready to go to the bank that day to secure the loan. And I was in bed, and she come in and woke me up. She said, hey, the mines is calling. And I said, tell them I'm not coming back out. I'm tired. Because they'd always call you to come back out if something, they needed some help or some people didn't show up or whatever. I said, tell them I'm not coming back out. I need a few hours sleep. We got to go to the bank. She goes, no, I don't think they want you to come out. They want to talk to you. So I got on the phone, and it was the personnel coordinator at the coal company I worked for at that time. And he said, hey, I hate to tell you this, but you're laid off. You're laid off. The day we was going to go secure the loan for our first home. Any of you ever experienced that? Not fun. It's not fun. So we, of course, had to cancel our big plans of buying our first home. I was laid off for over 6 months. I was one of the fortunate ones, because some of the folks that were laid off in that line was laid off for decades. My wife went to work waiting tables at 3 Ways Inn in Fairmont, West Virginia, making $2 an hour plus tips so we could pay the bills. Any of you ever been in that situation? If you have, you know what I'm talking about. $2 an hour plus tips. One thing that's not in consideration here, we had a child to take care of. Somebody had to work. And somebody had to take care of our kid, because our number one source of income was gone. Was gone. Senate Bill 3 coupled with Senate Bill 2 does not ease the pain here, ladies and gentlemen. It does not ease the pain, because there is child care and their well-being at stake. It's not just like go get a part-time job and flip some burgers. That makes things all right. That don't make things all right. It makes things more difficult. And also, contrary to popular belief, Mr. President, people do not wait till their unemployment runs out to look for work. I look for work every day. But you see, when you come from the coal fields, and that's the major source of employment, or you come from steel country, and that's the major source of employment, when that industry goes down, all the ancillary industries go down with it. The machine shops are laying off. They're not hiring anybody. The pump rebuild shops are laying off. They're not hiring anybody. The cable rebuild shops, they're laying off. They're not hiring anybody. Where are you going to go get a job till things get better? We hit bumps in the road all the time. And we all know people. If you're from West Virginia, let's be brutally honest. We all know people that we believe have gamed the system. We know that. But you know what I say to that? There's always going to be people who fall through the cracks, and it's our job to enforce the fraud and abuse. It's not our job to eliminate an entire program that helps good, hard-working West Virginians because of a few bad apples. Go after those bad apples. I'm with you. I'm with you. But don't punish the hard-working West Virginians that need this. Put 2 lists together. Put a list of all the bad seeds you know, and then put a list of all the good, hard-working West Virginians you know. And you all know which list is going to be much longer. You see, Mr. President, when your neighbor gets laid off, that's sad. That's a shame. But when you get laid off, it's a crisis. It's an absolute crisis of how you're going to deal with taking care of your family. And the sky is falling, Mr. President. When it happens to you, the sky is falling. And this indexing part of this piece of legislation, tying it all together, that sounds real good. But if you live in the coal fields and your unemployment rate shoots up in one county, but the rest of the state's doing good, indexing doesn't mean a daggone thing to you or the people you represent. Doesn't mean a daggone thing to you. Sometimes we need to let things stabilize. And sometimes that's not going to happen in 12 weeks. I disagree that it's a good thing when people leave West Virginia. I'm sorry. I totally disagree with that, because when they run to the Carolinas, which many of my coal mine co-workers did during those rough times, they never come back. They never come back. We got to try to keep them here and hope things stabilize and keep them working and hope that things get better. I don't want them to leave. I don't want them to leave for 5 weeks. I don't want them to leave for 5 days. I want them to stay here and hopefully things get better. Mr. President, this is kicking a man when he's down. This is kicking a man or woman when they are hurting the most. This is kicking them when they're down. This is a race to the bottom. This is not good for West Virginia. When we go out on the campaign trail and we tell everybody we want to make their life better and we're there for them, this bill does exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. I encourage a no vote.
Further discussion. Junior Senator from the 8th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 2. You know, I've worked since I was 15, whether it was cutting grass or bagging groceries or waiting tables or bartending or working on a farm. I appreciate significantly the importance and the dignity of work. And when I look at the folks to my right here, and I look to the senator from the 8th who worked harder than anyone I know, and I look to the senator from the 12th who never walks around with anything less than 2 computers, and I look to the senator of the 7th who maintains his practice and is still here every day that we're in session. This caucus believes in hard work and the importance of hard work and being able to provide jobs for West Virginians, because people feel best when they're productive. People feel best when they have opportunities. But that's not what Senate Bill 2 does. Let's stop with the games. That's not what Senate Bill 2 does. I offered an amendment. The testimony before Senate Judiciary was, and I'll say it again for folks who didn't have the opportunity and the benefit of sitting on Senate Judiciary. The Commissioner, Scott Atkins, said most people gain employment following unemployment within the first 6 weeks. And why is that? That's because we provide them resources. That's because workforce works with them every day. Yet when I offered an amendment to extend it to 12 weeks, if in fact the goal of this body is to put people back to work, that amendment fails. That's enough to tell me what the intent behind Senate Bill 2 is. Today, we got the justification, which has never been mentioned before, through the analysis of one individual of the Department of Labor Statistics, that the reason why we need Senate Bill 2 is because we have the most expensive unemployment system in America, or the third most. That wasn't said on the floor yesterday in defense of these bills. That wasn't said on finance. That wasn't said on judiciary. In response to that, I picked the most conservative outlet I could think of in the Tax Foundation. And Mr. President, we rank 26 when it comes to the unemployment insurance tax rate nationally. And that's for 2022. That's a fact. The testimony of Scott Atkins before Senate Judiciary, he didn't ask for Senate Bill 2. Furthermore, no one asked him about it. Now think about that. Here we're this bill seeks to cut unemployment benefits from 26 to 12, and no one in this body, according to Scott Atkins, talked to him about this bill. Does this work for workforce? Will this get people back to work? What's the economic benefit of this bill? No one talked to him. Think about that. That, to me, again, explains a lot of the intent of this bill. What Scott Atkins did say under oath in front of Senate Judiciary were the 3 reasons why people can't find work: child care, transportation, COVID. He said it was the exception of the rule that folks are just, as was stated earlier, or actually yesterday, people are just waiting for that last unemployment benefit. Because that's anecdotal. That's not reality. And if we're going to talk about kicking people off of unemployment benefits, I'd rather stick to reality and facts. One of the most conservative people I've ever met was my government teacher in high school. He was the type of guy, his name was Major Sands, and you walk into the classroom and he made it clear that this was not a democracy. This was a dictatorship. He was very conservative. But in the second semester, where we started talking, I don't know what we were talking about specifically. Maybe it was the rise of the welfare state, or maybe it was this benefit or that. And he shared a moment with us. He said, you know, you don't know how important those benefits are until you need them. Which is exactly what the senator from the 13th said through his real life experience. You don't know how important it is when you have to feed a family. No one wants unemployment benefits. No one wants to rely on unemployment benefits, but it's a bridge to get to that opportunity and job. And again, I go back to, if that's the intent of the bill, then we should provide resources for as long as possible to the people who are looking for work. And that's not part of Senate Bill 2, and it was voted against in Senate Bill 3. So let's do the work of the people of West Virginia. Let's vote no on this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion. Senator from Ohio for the second time. Senator from Ohio.
One shoe doesn't fit all. One of the studies show that if you're over 50 and looking for work when you're laid off, it takes a lot longer. And we have a lot of older people who have actually dropped out of the workforce. So when you consider cutting the number of weeks down, you should think about that. If you're over 50 and you're laid off, there's a great possibility you might not never go back to work again, or it takes a lot longer trying to find a job.
Further discussion. Before I recognize the Senator from Morgan to close. Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to talk about a couple of facts. We've been talking about the shiny object over here, and I think the real situation is over here. Did we have fraud during the pandemic? That's what a lot of this comes down to. Yes, we did. We've heard that testimony in post-audits, for example. We heard all the details about what happened during the pandemic with unemployment fraud. We asked, who perpetrated that? Bots, computer programs, organized crime. We asked, what can we do? What can we do to change that in the future and make sure we don't end up in the same situation? The response in post-audits from Workforce was, well, we need the appropriate software, equipment, technology. It's expensive. It's mighty expensive. This bill doesn't provide any of that. None of it whatsoever. This bill just cuts benefits for West Virginians. That's all it does. I'd like to talk about one other fact. This has been mentioned here today. It bears repeating. There's this idea that we have all these job openings because people are just sitting at home collecting checks. We've got about 8,000 people collecting unemployment in West Virginia today. We've all talked about that. We've got about 50,000 job openings in the state of West Virginia today. If you put everybody who's drawing unemployment in an open job, we still can't even come close to filling all those available jobs. And here's the next step that nobody wants to talk about. In West Virginia, only a quarter of people who are unemployed actually receive benefits, actually apply for and receive benefits. That's according to the National Employment Law Project. So let's say it's 4 times 8,000. Let's say it's 32,000. You put all those people in all the available jobs, it still doesn't fill much more than half. We've got proof recently in our recent local history that cutting benefits off early does not put more people back to work. Senator from Harrison mentioned this. It happened with PUA. Those were cut off. We didn't put more people back to work. It did not lead to more jobs getting filled. What will lead to more jobs getting filled? We heard that testimony. Child care and transportation. I'm not going to repeat myself again. 12 weeks. This is another important fact that has been overlooked, and I want to mention it for my district because I know it applies to mine and others. 12 weeks. The other states who have 12 weeks, Florida and North Carolina. What do we have that Florida and North Carolina don't have? Seasons. Seasons, and we can't change that. We have seasonal employment in West Virginia for construction workers, for hospitality, for the hospitality industry, for the tourism industry. I'm a realist at base. I know what's going to happen with my constituents who are in that scenario. My constituents who work in seasonal employment, when I only live 15 minutes from the Virginia line, they're going to go to Virginia. If they can't get benefits anymore to do seasonal work, then they're going to leave. One other thing that I want to say. During the pandemic, people started reaching out to me because they needed help getting their unemployment. I've sent, last time I checked, it was thousands of cases, over 4,000, I believe, myself personally, and I can't thank the workforce staff enough for their help in assisting with those cases. I was overwhelmed by the stories those folks told me. I couldn't get much else done, sending 4,000 cases along over 18 months. I was absolutely overwhelmed by the situations folks are facing each and every day, just trying to get by and take care of their families. The thing that bothers me the most about this is that all we're doing is cutting benefits to those folks. We're not going after the real problem here, the bots, organized crime, computer systems that perpetrated all this fraud. So there's been talk about courage. Mr. President, I think what takes courage is going to be looking at, in my case, seasonal workers back home and telling them how I voted on this bill, on something that's going to affect them and their family. It takes more courage to face those folks who have those real situations than it does to face those folks who've used a political narrative for political purposes. I stand in opposition to this bill for those folks. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in support of this bill, and I do this because I think this is another important tool in the toolbox for us to move forward. You know, back in 2014 when we ran, I remember very clearly everybody talked about jobs, jobs, jobs. We need jobs. Now, we'll always continue to do that, but fast forward just, you know, a few short years, 7, 8 years, now people are saying we need workers. We need workers. We need workers. Somebody help us with workers. I think the people of West Virginia back in 2014-15 took a very different approach and said, we're going to try something different because what we're doing is not working. And we have taken that into a very different direction, and there is a lot of concerns that things that we have done, bills and legislation we have passed is going to hurt people when in fact we don't want to hurt anybody. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent. There's not a single person that's elected to office that goes into that with the intention of hurting anybody. So we look at things extremely carefully so that we don't put people in jeopardy. We're not going into this haphazardly. We've looked at this for a year now. We've had many discussions with workforce, with looking at other states that's done this. We're not experimenting. West Virginia is not going to be guinea pigs by this legislation. In fact, when you look at Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, they've profited significantly in getting people back to work, creating jobs. For people that don't understand how unemployment works, unemployment is a tax. It's a tax paid on the back of West Virginia businesses. Every single employer has to pay a tax. Now that may be as low as about 1.7%, maybe as high as 7% for every single employee that goes into a pool. This isn't a infinite amount of money that we have to pay for unemployment. It's a finite amount of money, and that's there to help people when they have to lose their job. It's not endless, Mr. President. So we know that looking at our statistics on workforce, the average employer is about 6 to 9 weeks, and they're back to work. So what we're trying to do with this bill is two things. Number one, we know that there is some fraudulent activity. I got a call from workforce saying that I'd been unemployed for 2 years, and they were getting in touch with me, and I said, I'm not unemployed. I talked to several of my physician colleagues. Same thing happened to them. There was fraudulent activities going on. So what this bill does is it tackles that. This is West Virginians' money that we should be trying to protect, and so this bill takes into account fraudulent activity that does happen. It happened to me personally, so I can speak firsthand. And it happens to other West Virginia, and it takes away from that pool of money intended to help people that needs it. So this bill protects that. Number two is there is a shift. That unemployment tax is a inhibitor to businesses in West Virginia. So if we're really up here to create more jobs, we have to take that into account. And so if we can do what's intended, which is to help people that lose their job while at the same time lowering that tax down, then we're going to create more jobs. Because when you're a big employer, when you're a new core, when you're a big manufacturing, you have to look at all the cost involved. And when you're looking at unemployment, paying that percentage on every single employee you got, and we're one of the most expensive in the country, we've got to be competitive. We don't want to hurt anybody, but at the same time, we've got to be competitive. And that's what this bill does, especially when you take into account Senate Bill 3 that we just passed. You know, we're moving things to the front end in that 6 to 8 weeks when people are the most desperate, when they need the most help. We're taking that pot of money, we're shifting it forward, we're helping them more when they need it. We're not leaving it out there to just increase the cost. It lowers the cost of doing business in West Virginia. These two are great companion bills. I think it's going to move West Virginia forward. I think this is going to go along with what we've done over the past 7 or 8 years, and in a few years from now, we'll be looking back at this thinking what a great move it was. For these reasons, I support the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion before I recognize the Senator from Morgan to close. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief. We've had a nice, long, healthy debate on amendments and the bill. And it's a debate, it's one of those debates that I sort of enjoy from time to time here, Mr. President, because it's filled with passion, and I will say this, some hyperbole. We've been here before. We've had these debates before. This bill is balanced. It's fair and it's balanced. It does not, as some have suggested, just take things away from people. It continues to provide for an unemployment compensation program, as the majority leader correctly pointed out, funded 100% by the employers of this state, 100% of the premiums, and money in the trust fund is premiums paid by the employers of this state. We're going from a maximum of 26 weeks to a maximum of 20 weeks. It would have a minimum of 12 weeks, but we heard in testimony in the Judiciary Committee, perhaps the Finance Committee as well, that the average length of time people are on unemployment in West Virginia is about 6 weeks right now. So the minimum, the bare minimum that anybody could be eligible for under this bill is twice that average. The maximum at 20 weeks, if conditions get bad, we hope it won't happen, if our economy turns, would be more than 3 times that average. Now, there were some remarks were made about Mr. Adkins. And Scott Adkins, I should say, I probably should have said it, Mr. President, in my opening remarks, but I'll just say it here on the floor for people who may be watching and didn't get to hear it in Judiciary Committee. To a person, Mr. President, every person around the Judiciary Committee conference table out there congratulated Mr. Adkins on the excellent job he has been doing for really the last 2 years. You know, we've had healthcare responders and others who've had really hard duties during this pandemic, but high on the list of people who had to rise to a big challenge and did so is workforce under the leadership of Mr. Adkins, and I should also say our governor. He received congratulations and commendations from everybody, and I'll add my voice. I think I did in committee, but I'll do it again now. He was asked to do what was almost impossible with the unemployment compensation program during the pandemic, and really rose to the challenge. And he has been involved. I don't want anybody to be under the impression. He was shown, I think, consulted with drafts of this legislation. I would never presume to speak for him or anyone else on this floor as to whether he thinks it's a good idea or a bad idea. And ultimately, the truth is, that's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to decide here for the people of West Virginia whether this is good legislation or bad legislation. I believe strongly it's good legislation. It moves West Virginia forward. It will not, as some of the hyperbole has suggested, cause the sky to fall. Mr. President, we've heard that so many times, whether it was with the consideration of right to work, prevailing wage, fixing workers' compensation, eliminating third-party bad faith claims. So many times we've heard those resistant to change say the sky will fall. Mr. President, the sky will not fall. We will still have a generous and fair and balanced unemployment program in West Virginia. It will be indexed, as it logically should be, to the availability of jobs in the economy. Unapologetically, Mr. President, I urge passage of this bill as a measure that will be good for the future of West Virginia.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 20 yeas, 14 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective January 1, 2023.
Is there discussion? If not, question for the Senate is the motion by the Senior Senator for the 17th. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine to ascertain the results. On this question, 25 yeas, 9 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than two-thirds of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the motion, the bill effective from January 1st, 2023. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Mr. President, I move the Senate stand in recess for 20 minutes.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senate will be in recess for 20 minutes.